Welcome to Nazarene Israel. My name is Norman Willis, and this week we want to talk about one of the central keys of establishing Yeshua's kingdom globally. And we could talk about the priesthood because it's the priesthood that ties all the congregations together worldwide. But this week we want to talk about the selection requirements for congregational elders, because without the congregational elders, there really is nothing to tie together worldwide. It's the righteous congregational elders that truly build Yeshua's kingdom. So without righteous congregational elders, effectively, Yeshua's kingdom doesn't get built. And the reason why that is because the congregational level is where most of the real evangelization, most of the real pastoring, and most of the real spiritual growth and development, the sanctification of the believers takes place. So it's essentially an exemplar job. It's a very challenging service job. And it takes total and complete dedication, first and primarily to Yahweh Elohim, and then also to Elohim's people. Basically, the job calls for loving the people as if they were your own children. And that's something that's perhaps easy to say. It's definitely not easy or simple to do. But as we've spoken about before, what Yeshua wants effectively is Proverbs 31 brides who are going to help him build his global unified kingdom. And what that is to say is that what Yeshua wants is one single ministry worldwide, because his ministry is his spiritual kingdom. So what he wants is he wants for all of his ministers, all of his true workers to work together, not building their own kingdoms, but building his kingdom, not building their own ministries, but building his ministry. And this takes a very special discipline and a very special commitment, especially on the part of the congregational elders. And we need to talk about this because this is one of these things. I was called to, whether you want to call it the Messianic movement or the Hebrew Roots movement. Later we began to call it the Ephraimite movement. I got called to the Hebrew Roots movement back in 1999. And I've watched a lot of things take place, and I've seen a lot of pastors, a lot of ministers, a lot of rabbis, a lot of people trying to serve Yahweh Elohim basically in their own way and in their own power and strength. And most of those ministries are now gone. Not all of them, but most of them are now gone. We need to talk about this because most of them are independent ministers or independent ministries. And the problem is that operating apart from the rest of the body doesn't give Yeshua what he wants, because it doesn't help to build Yeshua's unified global kingdom. And if what Yeshua wants is a unified global kingdom, and we help to build something other than that, really there's no reward for it. So what we're really saying here is, if we want to be in Yeshua's will, if we want to receive a reward for our works, then we need to work together to build Yeshua's singular unified global ministry worldwide, which is his spiritual kingdom. We talk a lot more about that in the Torah government study and also in Acts 15 order. But the selection of righteous elders is such a critical thing, and it's so very important. And again, I've been in the Hebrew Roots movement since 1999, and I've kind of noticed that because the people don't truly know what the true standards are, and no one has ever taken the time to educate them as to what the true standards are, really in the Hebrew Roots movement or the Ephraimite movement, the Messianic movement, really there's kind of what you might call an anything goes attitude when it comes to leaders and teachers. And part of the reason for that is that most of the people don't realize what the true standards are. So anything goes, as long as it looks like a minister and sounds like a minister, and it's kind of devolved to the point where if you've got a Bible and a camera, you can be a ministry, and all you just have to have some nice words and a fancy sounding message, and you can sell your books and tapes and make a lot of money, preach prosperity doctrine, preach remarriage and redivorce, all kind of things. And, I just have seen so much of that. And the problem is it is absolutely unscriptural. And even beyond the fact that we're told not to market the word for profit, the big problem is it doesn't truly build a unified ministry or a unified spiritual kingdom for Yeshua based on his rules. And we know that in the day of judgment, we're going to be held to his standards. We have to do things his way. And if we don't do things his way, how do we expect to gain a reward? If we want a true reward, we have to build in stone, gold, silver, precious gemstones. And we need to not build in wood, hay, and stubble, because even though we may be saved as if by fire, the wood, hay, and stubble will all be burned up. So, and just to say it, really what I've noticed kind of since 1999 is that there's really, because of a lack of information, because of a lack of understanding as to what Yeshua's true standards are, you have a lot of people following many ministers who really don't qualify as ministers. They get remarried and redivorced and remarried and redivorced, and they don't step down from ministry, even though you might learn a lot of things from them. But what you don't get is an example of how to be conformed to Yeshua's example from them. And that's really a big problem. They're tying a great big millstone around their neck, and it's kind of a, forgive me for saying so, it's kind of a blind leading the blind situation, and everyone's going to fall into the ditch. So what we hope to do in this video is to help people understand what the true standards are. So if you're a person, you want to know what the true standards are for an elder, so you can follow someone who's going to lead you in the way that you should go. This video is for you. So in this video, or in this 3-part series, we hope to show what Scripture commands and also what Scripture prohibits regarding congregational elders. There's 2 parts. In the 3rd part, we're going to talk about congregational deacons. We're going to show people how to identify righteous elder and deacon teams so that they and their families can follow someone correct and someone who's following Scripture, and you're not going to end up with a blind following the blind situation and everyone falling into a ditch. And hopefully we also hope to show how doing this, how following righteous scriptural leadership will help to build Yeshua's global ministry and his global unified kingdom. So if that's of interest to you, I encourage you to stay with us for Set Apart Communities, Part 9, where we talk about selecting righteous elders. Stay with us. There's an old saying, if you don't know where you've come from and you don't know where you're going, you are, for all practical purposes, lost in any case. And sad to say, that's really the case with a lot of the leaders and teachers in the Messianic and Hebrew roots movements, because they don't really understand what the first century was all about. So when they go to earnestly contend for the first century faith, they don't really know what that is. And apparently from their teachings, they don't really know where we're going either. So they're not able to lead people in the way that they should go so that they can find approval in that day. So what we thought we'd like to do before we launch into our explanation of congregational elders is first let's talk about the future that we're headed to, and then we're going to talk about where we've come from, and then we're going to be able to see the continuity between the two. So we know from the prophecies in Ezekiel or Yechezkel from chapter 44 through chapter 48, it speaks about how Israel is once again going to be led by a constitutional prince or a constitutional president. And that term in Hebrew is Nasi. And it says in Ezekiel or Yechezkel, chapter 45, starting in verse 22, it says, and on that day, the Nasi, or the prince or the president, shall prepare for himself and for all the people of the land a bull for a sin offering. And there's a lot of people who they haven't read the Revelation study and they don't know what the end times are all about. And they assume that this prince is Yeshua because we're told that Yeshua is the Sar Shalom, the prince or the field marshal of peace. But what they don't realize is that the Sar Shalom, it's a Sar, that's a field marshal, that's a prince. That's not the same as a Nasi. A Nasi is a constitutional king or a constitutional prince or a constitutional president. And we know that this president or prince isn't Yeshua because he says right there in verse 22, he prepares for himself and all the people of the land a bull for a sin offering. Well, that's not Yeshua. That can't be Yeshua. Yeshua was the spotless, sinless, blemishless lamb. He doesn't need to offer a sin offering for himself. So We also know that the Nasi, or the constitutional prince, is going to marry, and he's going to have earthly sons. So I don't know if your theology allows you to think that. I have a hard time imagining Yeshua taking an earthly wife and bearing earthly children. That doesn't fit with my understanding. So if you want to know my understanding is, I encourage you to read or watch the Revelation study. On the YouTube channel, we have a study called Revelation Simplified. We also have a book called Revelation and the End Times. And either one of those two studies will bring you up to speed on where we believe we're going in the end times and pretty much where we are right now. But to talk about where we come from, so now we know we're headed to a constitutional kingship or a constitutional princeship or a Nasi-ship. And it comes as a big surprise to a lot of the Messianic leaders and teachers that that's the same thing we had in the first century. As we explain in our studies in Torah government and also in Acts chapter 15 order, we know that the Apostle Yaakov, or James, he was the leader of the Nazarene Beit Din Gadol. It's also called the Nazarene Big Court or the Nazarene Big Council, or if you prefer, the Nazarene Sanhedrin. So we know that Yaakov was the leader. We also know from those two books and from our earlier studies, we saw that Nazarene Israel in the first century as today and in the future is organized according to the Beit Din Gadol model or the Big Court model. And we know that the Nasi is the prince. We also know from our studies that in Ezekiel chapter 44 and 45, it tells us what the prince will do in the millennium, meaning after the tribulation, after Armageddon, and after the ingathering, when all Israel comes back home to the land. That's when the Nasi is going to be instituted, and he will lead Israel as the saints rule and reign for 1,000 years with Yeshua's rod of iron. We explain all that in the Revelation study. But in the first century, we know that Yaakov, or James, was the leader or the Nasi of the Beit Din Gadol, the Nazarene Sanhedrin, the Nazarene Council. And that's what they talk about the Jerusalem Council in Acts chapter 15. They're talking about the Jerusalem Beit Din. We also see it again in Acts chapter 21. Another thing that many Messianic leaders and teachers and many Christians also don't realize is that the apostle Kepha, or Peter, was an apostle to the circumcised, meaning to the Orthodox Jews, because Orthodox Jews believe they become saved by following the rabbinic traditions regarding male circumcision. We read about that in Galatians chapter 2 and verse 8. But a very important thing many Messianics don't realize, the apostle Kepha reported to Yaakov. Acts chapter 15 wasn't just a bunch of guys getting together in a room and having a big discussion. This was a Beit Din Gadol council meeting. Also, we see the apostle Shaul, or Paul. He was likewise an apostle, but to the Gentiles, or in context to the Ephraimites, in context to the northern house or the northern kingdom of Israel, also called the house or the kingdom of Ephraim. And the apostle Shaul also reported to the apostle Yaakov. So if we think about that, what that tells us is that we have at least, in that study, we can see at least two levels of authority and servant-led organization, in that the servants, Kepha and Shaul, both reported to Yaakov. And then if we take a look in Titus 1 and verse 5, now we're going to see the apostle Shaul commanding the apostle Titus to appoint or recognize, and we'll talk more about that next week, in next week's study. The apostle Shaul commanded the apostle Titus to appoint or to recognize servant elders in every city. As it says in Titus 1 and verse 5, "For this reason I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking, and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you." So if we take a look here, we see clearly that the apostle Shaul had the authority to command the apostle Titus. We also see that the apostolic priesthood has the authority to appoint or recognize, rather, the elders. Again, we'll talk about that difference next week. We also see that the apostle Shaul commanded Titus to appoint elders in every city. So the appointment of elders is an apostolic priesthood function. And we know from our earlier studies that we still need to be organizing ourselves according to the fivefold ministry model. Big news to the Messianic rabbis. So what we see also, we can infer that there are at least 5 levels of servant leadership or 5 levels of servant-led authority in this passage. So what we see here, we see Yeshua, who is our high priest in the heavenlies, and we submit to him, also to his spirit. Then in the first century, we saw that everyone else effectively submitted to the servant leader Yaakov, who was the Nasi of the Nazarene Beit Din Gadol. Then we also see in Scripture, we see the apostles Kepha and Shaul submitting to Yaakov, because Shaul was an apostle to the Gentiles or to the Ephraimites. We also see that Titus reported to Shaul because Shaul commanded Titus, and we know that Titus then appointed the elders in every city in Crete. So if we just take a look at this and just think about it just for a minute, what we see is at least 5 levels of servant leadership or servant-led authority. And what that means is that as we go to reestablish the original first century faith, we also need to be reestablishing this kind of unity, this kind of organization, because it's the organization and the hierarchy that allows for the global unity. We talk about that in both in Torah government and in Acts chapter 15 order. If you don't have the authority and you don't have the organization, you can't have the global unity. And that's how you end up with the messianic mess that we have today. There's a lot of people teaching against this kind of servant-led leadership that we see written right there in Titus 1 and verse 5. There's no denying it, but people do tend to deny it. So we really, again, talking about where we've come from in Yehuda or Jude, there's only one chapter, but verse 3, he says, "Beloved, well, I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation." He says, "Yet I found it necessary to write to you, exhorting you to contend earnestly for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints." What he's saying right there is he's saying, you're saved, I'm saved, everyone's saved here. But there's a problem because we're not adhering to this original first century faith that was delivered for all the saints. So do we understand in the Hebrew roots or the Messianic or the Ephraimite movements that what we're really being told here is to earnestly contend for this servant-led organization and authority? Do we understand that? Well, here's a graphic we had made up just depicting this. So, of course, hopefully we are all submitting to Yeshua and to his spirit. Hopefully submission to his spirit is a 24/7 kind of a thing. If it's not, we have some praying to do. But then we're provided cover by Yeshua and by his spirit. From there, we're provided cover by the priesthood. Well, we've already seen at least 3 different levels in the priesthood in the first century. First, you had Yaakov. Then you had Shaul or Kepha. Then you had Titus, Timothy, Apollos, Barnabas, these kinds of things. So there are many different priestly levels depending upon how developed the organization is. Hopefully in time will be even more developed. Then from there, the priesthood provides covering to the elders. The elders provide covering to the deacons, and the deacons then provide coverings to the families, both the husbands and the wives, and then of course the children. Well, we can take a look at the exact same thing, only in a different order. We take a look at the same servant leadership structure. Now, if we use the example or the analogy of an olive tree, or the righteous tree. So we have Yeshua, who is the root. Then you have the foundation of apostles and elders, also called the foundation of apostles and prophets, or the Beit Din Gadol, the big council, the big court, the Sanhedrin. So then they support in turn the elders in turn support the deacons in turn support the families, and then the husbands, of course, in turn support the wives. But it's the organization and the leadership that allows for the unification. It's the organization and the leadership that allows for a single tree, a unified tree structure. Without the leadership and without the organization, you can't have the unification. The same thing holds true if we talk about the living temple or the living tabernacle. We see on the bottom, we see the foundation of apostles and prophets, with Yeshua Messiah being the chief cornerstone. And then we have the congregational elders, which typically, although not always, have the gifts of pastors, evangelists, and teachers. It's not necessary. They can have the gift of apostles or prophets, but typically speaking, elders have more the gifts of pastors, evangelists, and teachers. But it's the unification upon Yeshua's doctrine that allows for the unification. It's the organization that allows for the unification. Without that organization, you don't have unification. And if you can't unify and order the stones, the living stones, and put them in the right order, you can't get that space for worship inside where the Spirit can enter in. So it is the organization that is so very lacking in the Messianic or the Hebrew roots movements today. Please share this with the people in your fellowship. This is something they need to know, because this is something Yeshua wants us to do. Because if we don't have this organization based on servant leadership, then really you don't have a living temple with the stones all arranged to form a space for worship inside. Really, all we have at that point is a big pile of stones or a big pile of rubble or stones scattered about a field, which is what we have effectively when we have a bunch of independent ministers and ministries. So what we see from all this is that there's various requirements for righteous congregational elders. So in Yeshua's kingdom, a righteous elder, he's going to be appointed by the apostolic priesthood, because the elder's job is to build the congregation, and it's the apostles' job to tie all the congregations together. So he's got to be appointed by the apostolic priesthood, as we saw in Titus 1 and verse 5. He's also got to be willing to take direction and discipline from the apostolic priesthood. Clearly, if the apostolic priesthood appoints him, then there needs to be direction and discipline. And another thing that's quite often lost is that there has to be a submission on the part of everyone, first to Yahweh Elohim and his Spirit, and then one to another in the Spirit. And we let the Spirit be the one to order us. We let the Spirit be the one to show us where it is that we need to serve in Yeshua's ordered kingdom. And it's this operation of the Spirit that's so lacking, for example, in the Catholic Church and in the Orthodox churches, because they stick more to forms and rote services and these kinds of things. There is no operation of the Spirit. And then in many of the Christian churches, there's an operation of a Spirit, but not of the Spirit, not truly the set-apart Spirit, because most of them deny not only the Torah, but they also deny the kinds of order that's needed in order to accomplish Yeshua's will. Because if you think about it, Yeshua's Spirit is going to lead us to do the same things that Yeshua is doing. So what is Yeshua doing? Yeshua is establishing his global unified kingdom. Yeshua is establishing and building one global ministry structure worldwide, which is his spiritual kingdom. So if we are involved in building Yeshua's one true spiritual kingdom, then we can truly say we are led by his Spirit, because that is what his Spirit is doing. And if we are not actively building Yeshua's global unified ministry or Yeshua's global unified spiritual kingdom, then how can we truly say maybe we're led by a Spirit, or maybe we're led by a portion of his Spirit? But are we truly led by the fullness of his Spirit? And it's that fullness of his Spirit that we're all going to want so very much in the day of judgment. So if your leader or teacher is not truly leading you to take part in Yeshua's one singular unified global ministry, then is it really an elder, or is it perhaps a false or a fake or a pseudo elder who is really setting up an alternate kingdom? There is such a thing as an anti-elder. There is such a thing as an anti-kingdom. And to have a bunch of independent ministries is really, it's not to have a global tabernacle of David set up. It's not to have a temple built with living stones. It's to have a bunch of stones strewn about the field, and there's no place for the Spirit to enter in. There's really no place for global worship to take place. So let's think about this. We serve a great king. He is the greatest. He's the king above all kings. And what is a king but a monarch? And what do monarchs like? Well, monarchs like centralized organization and authority. Because why? Because they're more efficient. So again, what Yeshua wants is for all of his ministers to work together at his ministry, according to the fivefold ministry doctrine, on a single apostolic foundation, which is what provides for unity. So if your leader is not willing and eager to take part in building Yeshua's global organized kingdom, then why is he not eager? Why is he not willing to build Yeshua's single global unified ministry? Because if we're not working to build Yeshua's single global unified ministry, then what are we really doing? Are we truly serving Yeshua? And what are we doing with our minas? And that's not just the tithe money. So we know from the parable of the minas that what Yeshua did, Yeshua speaks of a certain man who goes away to a far country in order to receive a kingdom and then return. Well, we know Yeshua is going to receive his kingdom and then he's going to return. But before he goes away, he calls his servants all together and gives them all a mina, which is a euphemism for our saved lives and basically all of our life resources, everything we have, everything we can do for him. And then he tells his servants to do business until he comes, meaning we're supposed to do as much as we can with our saved lives to help build his kingdom. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to do everything that we can to help build his kingdom. And there's a great reward for helping to build his one true unified global ministry, meaning his spiritual kingdom. And there's punishment for those who simply bury their minas and don't do anything with it. So this really is something that we need to think about every day. This is something, if you will, we can wear it as frontlets between our eyes and we can bind it as a sign on our hand, so to speak, meaning it should be our every thought that goes on in our forehead. It should be what we're looking to, is to build his kingdom. And really, it's everything that we do to bind it as a sign on our hand. It's something, because if we're not working to build Yeshua's global kingdom, his global unified ministry, what are we doing? And how are we expecting a reward when we're not doing Yeshua's will? That just doesn't make any sense. So one of the things we need to understand, and this calls, Yohanan Hamadbil, John the Baptist, tells us that we must decrease so that he might increase. And really, what this calls for is for a lot of people to swallow their pride and to swallow the things that they want to do and realize that this is not about us. And this is not about prosperity doctrine. This is not about making a bunch of money. This is not about being hot shots on Saturday Night Live TV shows. This is not anything like that. This isn't about us. This is about us building up our husband. This is about us lifting up our husband's kingdom. This is about us coming together to help build a global unified ministry, a single ministry where all the true ministers work together to build his ministry and not our own ministries. So really, if you think about it, it's a team sport. So, to be a rogue minister or a rogue apostle or a rogue elder, that doesn't help to build a global unified team. If we're going to do things our way, guaranteed we're not doing things Elohim's way. So, and if we think about it, really, if we're not building Yeshua's kingdom, then really what we're doing is we're aiding fragmentation. Really what we're doing is we're helping to further the agenda of the enemy, is really what we're doing. So this is something so very important. We have to understand Yeshua is a great king. He's a monarch. He wants one single kingdom, one single ministry, and he wants everyone to work together at it. Or else we're not doing our job and we can't expect a reward. So people say, well, Norman, come on. So we know from Mark chapter 9 and verse 40, Yeshua tells us, he says, for he who is not against us is on our side. Kind of, sort of, so to speak, not really. But the verse that's then not often quoted and really needs to be is Matthew or Matthew 12 and verse 30, where Yeshua then tells us, he who is not with me is against me. He who does not gather with me scatters abroad. Because what he wants is for all of us to work together to do his kingdom business. He wants all of us to work together to serve him. And if we're not doing his will, then effectively we're setting up alternate kingdoms. We're setting up stumbling stones. We're setting up distractions, if you will, for Yeshua's true kingdom work. So it's a very important message. This is something I really hope and pray that every single elder, every single minister out there will listen to this message really and be struck in the heart. Because if we're not here to do Yeshua's will, what are we doing? Are people making a bunch of money off selling books and tapes and they're really not interested in doing what Yeshua says to do? And if so, what does that say about us? What does that say about our reward in the day of judgment? Ouch. So what we need to do, though, is we need to understand that there's a continuity of requirements for elders today with regard to the requirements for elders in ancient times. So what we want to do with the rest of this presentation to get ready to look at the requirements in the renewed covenant in next week's portion, we want to take a look at the advice that Moshe's father-in-law Jethro gave to Moshe or Moses. And really, Jethro told Moshe that he was unable to serve the nation of Israel, working as one man alone without organization. And this is something that should speak to every messianic minister, every independent leader and teacher. And I have seen ministers stand up and boast before congregations that they are an independent minister and they are not associated, they are not affiliated, they're not allied with any other ministry, and they boast about this. And I just can't help but wonder, it's like, are we the leaders of Israel? Are we the teachers of Israel? We don't even understand what Yeshua wants because we don't know where we've come from and we don't know where we're going. So we don't know what it is that we need to be doing right now. So anyhow, basically what Yitro told Moshe is that if he wanted to lead the nation of Israel to their place in safety and in peace, then he needed to establish organization, or perhaps he needed to establish an organization in order to lead the nation effectively. And this is something Brother Judah seems to have very little difficulty with the concept that we need to have organization and order. Brother Judah just tumbles to that very quickly. But we in Ephraim, we are so rebellious. It's like we don't want organization, we don't want leadership, we don't want tithing, we don't want rules, we don't want regulations, we want none of that. We just know we want absolutely nothing to do with that, even though it's what Yeshua wants us to do. So we have to make a choice between our Ephraimite identity and our identity as disciples of Yeshua, as Nazarenes. Because Yeshua says, he says, why do you call yourselves my disciples when you don't do what I say? So if we want to be his disciples, if we want to have a portion or a place in the world to come, if we want to have a portion or a place in the judgment and the resurrection, really we need to pay close attention to what Yeshua says. And if we have a close physical reaction or an emotional reaction to what Yeshua says to do, we really need to look at that, because there's really no place to be calling ourselves disciples when we don't want to do what Yeshua says to do. So in Shemot, or Exodus chapter 18, starting in verse 13, it says that so it was on the next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood before Moshe from morning until evening. So when Moshe's father-in-law Yitro saw all that Moshe did for the people, he said, "What is this thing that you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit and all the people stand before you from morning until evening?" And Moshe said to his father-in-law, "Well, it's because the people come to me to inquire of Elohim." And well, that's basically what Moshe was, a judge. And that's what a judge will do, is the people will come bring something to a judge, and the judge will pray and listen. One of the things, so a judge is very similar to an apostle. So a judge is kind of like an Old Testament apostle, and then an apostle is kind of like a New Testament judge. So the thing is that an apostle has the ability to hear in the Spirit and speak according to it, because an apostle has the prophetic gift. Both apostles and prophets have the prophetic gift by definition. If they don't have the prophetic gift, then they're not an apostle and they're not a prophet. So they have to be able to hear in the Spirit and speak according to it. An apostle then also has an understanding of the doctrine. Well, in the Tanakh times, in the Old Testament times, then a judge had to have the ability to hear in the Spirit and speak according to it. He had to have the prophetic gift, and he also had to have an understanding or a knowledge of leadership, basically the kingship function. So once again, a judge was kind of like an Old Testament apostle. An apostle is kind of like a New Testament judge, except that there can be Usually there's only one judge at a time. With apostles, you can have more than one apostle at a time, but there has to be order between them because everything has to be ordered in Elohim's kingdom. So Moshe says, when they have a difficulty, they come to me and I judge, or I render judgment, or I direct between one and the other. So I pray and I listen for what Elohim says so that I make sure it comes from Elohim, make sure it comes from the Spirit and not from myself. And then I make known the statutes of Elohim and his laws. So you'd think that this is a good thing. You'd think that's exactly what he's supposed to do as a judge. But Moshe's father-in-law, Jethro, said, no. Oh, hold up. The thing that you're doing is not good, because both you and these people who are with you are surely going to wear yourselves out. Because without organization, without appointing other leaders, this thing is too much for you. You're not able to perform it by yourself. Now listen to my voice, and I'm going to give you counsel, and Elohim will be with you. So stand before Elohim for the people. Yes, do what you've been doing. Stand before Elohim for the people so that you may bring the difficulties to Elohim. But don't just do that. He says, and you're going to teach them the statutes and the laws and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do, which even in ancient times was to do the preparatory work for building Yeshua's kingdom. Because that's always been the point, is to build a kingdom for Yeshua. We're just in a different phase of the operation now. He says, moreover, don't just do that. Don't just do the things you've been doing. But moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear Elohim. So this is, and we see the continuity. They had to fear Elohim in the Tanakh, the Old Covenant. They also have to fear Elohim in the Brit Hadashah, or the renewed covenant. The men of truth, hating covetousness. So this is also a renewed covenant requirement we're going to see again next week. So they have to be men of truth. They have to hate covetousness or greedy gain. And place such men to be rulers over thousands and over hundreds and over 50s and over 10s. He says, and let them judge the people at all times at their lower levels. And then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge, just like happens in the congregations. The elders judge the vast majority of the cases. He says, so it will be easier for you, and for they will bear the burden with you. And he gives the promise. He says, if you do this thing, and Elohim so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people also will go to their place in peace. Well, what a nice promise. Isn't that also what we want, is to go to our place in peace? So if they had to organize in Tanakh times in order to go to their place in peace, then what about us in renewed covenant times? Don't we also have to organize so that we may go to our place in peace? So what we notice is that in the Levitical order in Tanakh times, the chosen leader, now notice he wasn't an anointed leader, he was a chosen leader. Moshe, he was called. He had to appoint the elders and the leaders over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. Now notice, the thing is, now we've talked about this before, the specifics are going to change between the Levitical order and the Melchizedekian order. So there's going to be different details between the different priesthoods, but the principles and the precepts are going to be the same. The details can change, but the principles and the precepts remain always the same between the orders. So now while the numbers are going to differ, and we don't know in the Levitical order, we don't know if it was exactly 1,000, exactly 100, exactly 50, and exactly 10, or if those were rough approximations. But what we know is that while the numbers are going to differ in the Melchizedekian order, because we don't organize by thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s, rather we organize by cities. So while the numbers differ, we're still going to have the exact same need for organization and servant-led authority in the Melchizedekian order. We're going to see next week there's still a need for organization. There's still a need for servant leadership in order to make things work, in order to make things flow correctly, so that we can all go back home to our place in the land of Israel in peace. And that's because one of the things we need to be doing, we need to be establishing Yeshua's single, global, organized ministry. We need to be establishing his single, unified kingdom. We can't do that without organization. And some people say, well, the Christians will tell us, all that stuff was done away with at the cross or the stake or the gallows or the tree or whatever it is you want to call it. All that stuff was done away at Calvary or Golgotha or whatever, but that stuff doesn't apply to us anymore. That doesn't apply right now. Well, let's not be so sure about that, because in Luca, chapter 9 and verse 14, in the feeding of the 5,000, we see that Yeshua himself followed this pattern when he said to his disciples, make them sit down in groups of 50. This is what he's talking about. He's talking about the same groups of 50 as in thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So Yeshua himself was still following the organization by thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And if Yeshua is our example, then how is it that we feel that we don't need to be organized by thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, or by cities, or by families, or this kind of a thing? As we're going to see next week, we're going to see that the Apostle Shaul also basically wanted leaders over groupings. We could say tens, fifties, hundreds, and thousands, but basically over cities, over groupings. And this is why the Apostle Shaul told the Apostle Titus to appoint righteous servant elders in every town, so that the body could edify itself in love in his absence. So Moshe was absent. Moshe couldn't attend to every case. He had other leaders in order to handle the vast majority of the cases. The Apostle Shaul couldn't be in every town. So that's why he had Titus appoint righteous servant elders, so that the body could edify itself in love. So now next week, when we come for part 2, we're going to see the specifics of what it takes to be a righteous servant elder in renewed covenant times, or Brit Hadashah times, so that the body can edify itself in love, and so we can unify at the set-apart community level, so that we can do the mission Yeshua expects us to do. We can all go back home to our place in the land of Israel in peace one day. So if this interests you, I encourage you to join us again next week for the qualifications for selecting righteous elders, part 2. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you next week. Shalom.